Have you ever wondered what happened to the most notorious Nazi leaders after World War II ended? Our story begins in the mid-20th century, a time marked by the rise and fall of one of the most infamous political parties in history, the Nazi Party. This period was characterized by the aggressive expansion of the Third Reich, the brutal oppression of millions, and the chilling efficiency of the Nazi war machine. However, as the sun set on the Second World War, the seemingly invincible Nazi Party crumbled. The world watched, waiting to see what would become of the leaders who had orchestrated such immense destruction. The post-war fate of these figures is a tale of justice, escape, and in some cases, continued impunity. Today, we are going to explore the aftermath of World War II from the perspective of the Nazi leaders who shaped it. Let's delve into the life and fate of some of the most infamous Nazi leaders after the war. Adolf Hitler, the man who orchestrated the Holocaust, met his end in a bunker. The man, who once held sway over the entire Third Reich, spent his final days isolated and defeated in an underground shelter, deep beneath the Chancellery in Berlin. As the Allies closed in on Berlin in April of 1945, Hitler's world began to crumble around him. The once vaunted Wehrmacht was in tatters, his most trusted lieutenants had either been captured or had deserted him, and his dream of a 1,000-year Reich was in ruins. Refusing to face the humiliation of capture, Hitler made the decision to end his life. On April 30th of that year, Hitler and his longtime companion Eva Braun, who he had married just a day earlier, committed suicide. Hitler shot himself and Braun ingested cyanide. Their bodies were later found by Hitler's aides, who followed his orders to burn them, leaving little physical evidence behind. Yet, the lack of a definitive corpse led to controversy and conspiracy theories about Hitler's death. Some suggested that he had managed to escape and had lived out his days in South America. However, these theories have been largely debunked by historians and experts who point to the testimonies of those in the bunker and the subsequent findings of Soviet troops. The Soviets, who were the first to reach the bunker, initially reported that they had not found Hitler's body. This fueled speculation about his fate. However, later they revealed they had indeed found remains, which were analyzed and confirmed to be Hitler's through dental records. Regardless of the controversy, Hitler's death signified the ultimate downfall of the Third Reich. His suicide marked the collapse of a regime that had terrorized the world, caused the deaths of millions, and changed the course of history forever. Despite the mystery around his death, Hitler's demise marked the end of the Nazi reign. The man who had once dominated the world stage exited with a whisper, leaving behind a legacy of destruction and a world eager to move beyond the horrors of the Second World War. Heinrich Himmler, the chief of the SS and one of the main architects of the Holocaust, also met a grim end. As the Second World War entered its final phase, Himmler found himself in a precarious position. He had risen to become one of the most powerful men in Nazi Germany, overseeing the extermination of millions. Yet, as the tide of war turned against the Reich, Himmler's illusions of grandeur began to crumble. In a desperate bid to salvage his own fate, Himmler attempted to negotiate peace. He reached out to the Allies behind Hitler's back, offering a ceasefire on the Western Front, but his plan was as futile as it was treacherous. The Allies, fully aware of his role in the Holocaust, rebuffed his advances. With his plan thwarted, Himmler tried to slip away into obscurity. He disguised himself as a sergeant major of the secret military police, adopting the pseudonym Heinrich Hitzinger, but his disguise didn't last. On May 22, 1945, he was apprehended by British forces in Bremen. Himmler's arrest marked the beginning of the end for the former SS chief. His identity was soon revealed and he was scheduled to stand trial for his crimes against humanity. But Himmler, ever the master of deceit, had one final trick up his sleeve. On May 23, less than a day after his capture, Himmler committed suicide. He bit into a cyanide capsule that he had concealed in his mouth, choosing death over facing justice for his heinous crimes. Himmler's death, much like his life, was shrouded in secrecy and deceit. His demise marked the end of one of the most sinister chapters in human history, but for the millions who perished under his watch, justice remained elusive. Their memories, however, live on, a stark reminder of the horrors that unfolded under Himmler's command. Hermann Göring, Hitler's designated successor, faced the consequences of his actions at the Nuremberg trials. This marked a significant turning point in the post-war era, as the trials were an attempt to bring the perpetrators of the Holocaust and other war crimes to justice. In the heart of Nuremberg, the trials commenced in November 1945, with Göring being the most prominent figure among the accused. He was charged with 4 counts: conspiracy to wage aggressive war, crimes against peace, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. Göring, ever the charismatic figure, attempted to use his wits to defend himself. He denied culpability, asserting that he was merely following orders, a defense that would later become known as the Nuremberg defense. He argued that he was not privy to the plans for the Holocaust, despite evidence to the contrary. But the tribunal was not swayed. After 10 months of proceedings, the court handed down its sentence in October 1946. Göring was found guilty on all counts and was sentenced to death by hanging. This was a significant moment, signaling that even those in the highest echelons of power could be held accountable for their actions. However, Göring had one last act of defiance up his sleeve. Just hours before his scheduled execution, he committed suicide by ingesting cyanide. The circumstances surrounding his suicide remain a mystery, with speculation about how he acquired the poison rife even today. Despite his suicide, Göring's trial and sentencing were significant. They marked a shift in international law, with leaders now being held accountable for their actions during times of war. It served as a stark reminder that power does not absolve one of responsibility or protect one from the repercussions of their actions. Göring's death showed that even the highest-ranking Nazis could not escape justice. His trial, sentencing, and subsequent suicide served as a potent symbol of the downfall of the Nazi regime and the pursuit of justice in the aftermath of World War II. Not all Nazi leaders faced justice immediately after the war. Josef Mengele, the infamous Angel of Death of Auschwitz, managed to escape. A chilling moniker that was well earned, Mengele was notorious for his heartless experiments on prisoners, particularly twins and children. Yet, when the war ended, he slipped through the Allies' net and managed to evade capture. How did this happen, you may ask? After the fall of Nazi Germany, Mengele was detained by American forces. However, his true identity was not known at the time and he was released. It wasn't until 2 years later that his horrendous crimes were fully recognized. But by then, Mengele had already disappeared. He found refuge in South America, initially in Argentina, where he lived under a series of pseudonyms. With the help of a network of former Nazis and sympathetic sympathizers, he managed to maintain a low profile while still continuing his research. He lived comfortably, far from the reach of justice, surrounded by those who shared or were indifferent to his twisted ideologies. When his safe haven in Argentina became threatened by the capture of Adolf Eichmann, another high-profile Nazi fugitive, Mengele moved again. This time he settled in Brazil, living in near poverty. His years of comfort were over, but his freedom remained intact. In Brazil, Mengele lived out the rest of his days in obscurity. His past caught up with him only in death. In 1979 he suffered a stroke while swimming and drowned. He was buried under a false name, and his true identity was only confirmed years later, after forensic testing on the exhumed remains. Mengele's story is a chilling reminder that some war criminals managed to slip through the cracks. His escape and the life he led after the war stand as testament to the holes in the net of justice. They remind us that vigilance is essential, even in the aftermath of such a devastating conflict. The fate of these Nazi leaders shows the varied paths their lives took after the fall of the Third Reich. Adolf Hitler, the infamous dictator, met his end in a bunker, marking the collapse of Nazi Germany. Heinrich Himmler, the architect of the Holocaust, took his own life when capture was imminent. Hermann Göring, once the second most powerful man in Germany, faced justice at the Nuremberg trials but cheated the hangman's noose by swallowing cyanide. Josef Mengele, the Angel of Death, managed to escape, living out his days in South America, a chilling reminder that justice does not always prevail. The aftermath of World War II was complex, filled with tales of retribution, evasion, and the quest for justice. It's a stark reminder of the depths to which humanity can sink, and the lengths we must go to prevent such horrors from recurring. Remembering these stories is crucial to ensure that such atrocities are never repeated in the future.